in the book of Ruth, that series that we started way back in May. Bless you, I knew a third one was coming. In the book of Ruth, we talked about, it's a book about choices. They had to make choices. So let me back you up if some of you have forgotten or weren't with us then. But the book of Ruth was Naomi the mother, and her husband Elimelech. They were off, had to go to Moab because of a drought. And there was not enough there for them. Woo, bless you again. And so as they went there, she had 2 sons and they grew up. And as the sons grew up, they took wives, and it seemed like a happy, wonderful time, but her husband died. Well, at least she had 2 sons to take care of her. But you know what? Her 2 sons died. And her 2 sons died, leaving just 2 daughters-in-law. Well, she got word that back home, she headed back home, Israel, the land God had promised his people, she could head back there and there would be food. But who would go with her? The 2 daughter-in-laws, they both said, we'll go, we'll go. They started on the path, and they stopped, and on that path, one of them turned around and went back. Orpah said, that's enough for me. I will go back and find another husband and stay with my people and worship our false gods and live the life I'm used to. Ruth says, no, I'll go with you, Naomi. I'll go with you. Your people will be my people. Your place will be my place. I'm going to go with you and stick with you. And so we read how they came back to town, and Naomi was pitiful. Sorry, I just say that because she came into town and they'll say, oh, it's Naomi. Life is good. Life is full. She goes, no, life was full when I left, but I've come back empty. Just call me Mara. I'm bitter. I'm empty. There's nothing to my life. My husband died. My sons died. I mean, I got this daughter-in-law, and that's nice, but, you know, that's about it. So Ruth has to go out and start gleaning in the fields. She goes out, and as it would happen, no, as God had directed, she ends up in the field of a guy named Boaz. Boaz is a relative of theirs. And in their culture, this relative, this redeemer, family redeemer, this person could redeem and come and help out the family. Wow. So Naomi gets a plan for this daughter-in-law. We read about this 2 weeks ago. She said, Ruth, get yourself all showered and clean and nice and pretty. Do your hair, put on some perfume, and go down there in the evening just before it's dark. And then go down and find out watch where Boaz is laying down. Because he's down in the town square. He's been threshing, he's been getting his grain all taken care of, and he's down there guarding it. You sneak down there by him and you open the blanket down by his feet and you just lay by his feet and you hold his feet and keep him warm. Well, in the middle of the night, Boaz, remember you kind of, do you do that? I feel like a rotisserie chicken. I can lay this way and then I have to lay that way. And then, so he turns around and he turns over and I was like, well, there was some, ooh, smell that perfume? There was some woman down there with perfume on holding his feet and keeping him warm. And he realizes it's Ruth. And he realizes that custom meant she was saying, I will serve you. I will even go so much as to hold your feet and keep them warm. I will help take care of you. And he couldn't believe it. But he said, oh, I would be happy to be a redeemer. But he says, you know, instead, he said, there is somebody else that's even a little bit closer related. And so he says, well, I'll check things out in the morning. You wait till just dawn, just before the sun really comes out. And you scurry on home so no one sees you. So Ruth hurried on home. And as Ruth hurries on home, she gets there and she and Naomi both go, we'll see when he works out. He's going to work something out. That's where we are, chapter 4. Okay, this is amazing. This is this chapter. Verse 1, meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Was that by accident? He just happened to say, oh, the very guy he talked about comes along. No, we know God works these things out. And he sees the guy walking by, and he says, Boaz says, come over here, my friend, and sit down. So he went over and sat down. Now what's happening? The town gate is where all the announcements were made. That's where you would go and take care of court cases. They didn't have a courtroom. They just went to the town gate, and the leaders of the town would sit there and make decisions about things. So they would see that the law was carried out. They would make sure contracts were handled and all kinds of things like that. So the business was being done there. So here's Boaz. He's sitting there. He gets this guy to come over and sit down. And he says, verse 2, Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, sit here. And they did so. Now what was that? That was because they considered 10 elders of the town to be the jury. It would be like getting the jury to come. They would be the witnesses. They would see to this, and it would be an official moment. So 10 leaders sit down, Boaz, and that other dude. And there they are. Verse 3. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, what is it? Someone who could redeem and be a guardian to them. Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. That was Naomi's husband that died. And he still had property, but she can't own it. Women couldn't own it at that point. So somebody needed to hang on to that property for her family. Verse 4, I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and then I am next in line. Oh, man. To get Elimelech's property, he's going to be able to buy the property that belonged to Elimelech? Ooh. He's thinking, probably a younger guy, and he could get more property, and this would all be a good thing. Because he answers, I will redeem it. I will buy it so it doesn't get sold off to somebody else. I will buy it and keep it in our family. Verse 5. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. Now see, can you imagine that? She went with the property. This Moabite daughter-in-law had come to help all the way along, and now she gets tossed in the land deal. If you buy the land, you get her. And that means you're going to have children with her so that those sons can continue to carry on the property. See, they won't be your sons. They'll be the sons in the name of her husband who died. Oh. Wow. At this, verse 6. At this, the guardian redeemer said, well, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, we don't know why that is. It could be that he had a wife that didn't appreciate him having another one. It could be that he had enough kids for his own property and he needed one more. All I'm saying is he decided, I don't think I want to be part of this deal. I'm stepping out of it. Verse 7 gives us some history. It says, now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final. Doesn't say they signed on the dotted line. It says one of them would take off his sandal and give it to the other person. This was a method of legalizing the transactions in Israel. So can you imagine? You're ready to sign the papers, I'm going to buy this property, and you get these papers, you talk about it, and then you take your sandal off and hand it to the other guy, and now you've bought it. You walk home with one sandal, and everyone knows, oh, he must have been out buying property, right? So he gets himself this way. Well, here it is. This is what he's saying. So verse 8, so the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, you buy it yourself. And he removed his sandal and said, his part was, I'm promising before everyone. You see this? It was his sandal. He held up a sandal. I'm not going to do it. Boaz can do it. That's how he made it legal that he did that he stepped aside. So then verse 9. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are my witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, her husband's property and the property that belonged to her sons. So he was buying all of their property. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite. Woohoo! She's in the deal. He gets Ruth too. Mahlon's widow as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are my witnesses. Wow. Here was this older gentleman with all the property he had. He was quite a bit older than her. And yet he said, I'm going to take her on, help her to have children, and those children will carry on their father's name, not mine. He was secure in his manhood. He was fine with all that. He understood the law. Verse 11, then the elders and all the people at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Whoa, he names these women, especially when he names the women who created the 12 tribes of Israel. That she would have 12 kids. Wow, have a whole bunch of kids. Let this be a wonderful time. Ruth now is being handed over to him to be his wife. They made choices. Ruth could have still said, hey, I'm not in this deal. But she chose to go along. She chose to do the right thing. She chose to stay with God's people, worshiping God, who she'd come to love as her God. And so here she is. And now we get to verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. All the way. She became his wife. All the way. We all got that? When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, all the women, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. So here it is. Here's this moment. She marries. She's all interested in this whole new lifestyle now with Boaz, and they have a son. And everyone goes, wow, because now you see that son will grow up and be able to keep the land and be able to keep his father's name. So this is important. This is all happening. And then they said, you know, it's all because you may have lost your husband and you may have lost your 2 sons. But God gave you Ruth, your daughter-in-law, who chose to be with you. She was better than 7 sons. And if you've ever had boys, maybe you understand that. She's better than 7 sons, this daughter, because now she's given a child that will carry on the family name in their old age. Here's this moment. Here's this time. And so now, I always wondered about this. Here's Ruth. She's married to this guy. He gives a son in the husband's name. But now who raises the baby? It goes to Naomi. Grandma gets to raise the baby. Now that's more common these days than you can imagine. But Grandma is going to raise this baby. So she's holds the baby and takes care of him. And they chose now this new life to begin to be in the family name. to carry on the family name. So the story seems kind of strange until you get to the end. And then at the end of this chapter, they throw in this whole thing about, why is this even important? This was a Moabite woman, and they didn't even like the Moabites. That's who Ruth was. But she'd become a believer in God. You know, it's kind of like us. We're all just sinners until he cleanses us and changes us, and we become children of God. That's the difference. Here's what's happening here, but it says in verse 17, the women living there said, in other words, they probably shouted it out, Naomi has a son. And they named him Obed. Now, Obed is an interesting name. That's nice. But why is that important? Because it says here, he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Oh! If you did the genealogical study, if you looked at Ancestor.com and you found it out, you'd find out that Obed, here it is, had a son named Jesse, and Jesse then had a son named David. Yeah, the David that we read about in the Bible. This then, verse 18, is the family line of Perez. That's why they said that in that chant. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon. And we're going, who are all these people? We don't know much about a lot of them until you get down to about verse 21. Salmon is the father of Boaz. Boaz now is the father of Obed, this little boy that came through Ruth. Obed is the father of Jesse, and Jesse is the father of David, the King David that we read about, the one who wrote most of the Psalms, the one we understand, David in the lion's den, all those things. Here it is, this story. This is his history. Well, we have to read this not as a story, but as history. History of what happened. How God took this person. Remember? She lost her husband and she lost her sons. They're out of the picture. No family line. Stops there. Nothing's going to happen. But God had a different plan. And God's plan was going to come through no matter what. So God wasn't surprised that they had died early. God wasn't surprised that Ruth came with Naomi. God isn't surprised that Ruth ended up in Boaz's field. God isn't surprised that Boaz brought it to the city gates and he ended up winning out. Cost him a sandal. But he got Ruth. The cost of weddings nowadays, I'm thinking he got out pretty good with just a sandal. He gets Ruth, and God gives them a son through Ruth, and that son becomes Obed, who becomes the father of Jesse, who becomes the father of David, and his family line continues. Because who is in that family line? Jesus himself will come from that family line. So here is this whole history lesson put in here in this book of Ruth, all about choices. What are the choices we have to make? We have to make a choice like Ruth did. Do I worship the gods of this world? And most of us probably don't worship little statues or idols or things. There are people who do. Instead, nowadays, a lot of people just worship their checking account, or they worship their investments, or they worship a sport, or they worship a boat, or they worship or we have to choose to worship God, like Ruth did. And then Ruth just found herself in this place, worshiping God, but also realizing we have to do something or we're going to starve to death. So she went to work gleaning. And there are times we just have to get doing something. And most everyone in this room has spent a lot of years doing that stuff. Punching the time clock, working the jobs, doing the stuff, you know, making a living, paying the bills, all those kinds of Some of you are so happy you don't have to mess with that anymore. How many of you are happy you don't have to punch a time clock anymore, you know? Joyce is the first one to jump up and almost shout for joy. So, you know, after 44 years for her at the newspaper office, she was so done. She started there with written journals with a pencil and a pen, all the way up to the computer program. So she went through it all. Some of you worked stores, worked in places. I know some of you worked hard jobs in different places. Where did some of you work? Where did some? What?
Mom was a hairdresser.
Hairdresser. Teachers. Some of you were teachers. Writers, teachers, workers, canning. It's almost canning season. Some of you are like, don't have to worry about that anymore. They feed you good enough here without having to can. Okay. So we went through that part of life, and Ruth did those things. She didn't just wait. Well, I believe in God. I'll just trust in God, and He'll just make everything happen. No, she got busy. There are times we need to be busy people. So we're busy. But then it came time to making the choice of, does she follow in this plan that God was laying out? She didn't say, no way, no. She was thankful that God provided, and in fact, she is listed in the genealogy of Jesus. Ruth, this Moabite girl, she'd come a long way from Moab, all the way to where God put her in the family line of Jesus. And all that was because she just trusted God's plan. She followed in what He laid out for her. And our deal now is we just have to trust in God's plan for us every day. You wake up in the morning. You're laying in the bed. It's time to get up. You know, they want you to come for breakfast. Yeah. Right? You have to choose to get out of the bed. Then you have to come down here and you have to choose what kind of food you're going to have. What you want to eat. Oh, excuse me. You have to choose what to put on. Got to put clothes on, okay? I don't know they let you come down here in your jammies. I think you have to put clothes on, right? Okay, woo, that's a good thing. Some of you, I don't think we want to see you in your jammies. Okay, so you come down, you've made choices. What a lot of people don't understand is we also have to make choices in who we will serve, who we will live for, who we will trust in, who we will follow spiritually. And I'm asking, I'm hoping that you trust Jesus. That you want to follow God's plan of how He already worked all these things out. Ruth followed the plan because she could see God had already been working everything out. Would you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, today we realize that you are a God who loves us. You're a God who created all things. And you're a God who wants to have a relationship with us. So you sent your Son to die on the cross. And Jesus, you were willing to come and die on that cross and rise again to make a place for us to pay our toll. Our wages of sin is death. You paid them out in your blood so that we can come freely to God and simply say, we believe in you. We want to follow you. We're sinners and we ask you to cleanse the sin from our hearts and make us ready to be with you. We love you. We want to follow you. We trust you. And we know that you've got everything planned out. So we don't have to worry about tomorrow. We don't even have to worry about today. We know that we're in your hands and we're trusting you to guide our steps. And we give you thanks for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, the book of Ruth was fun. It was fun to go through that story. And guess what next Sunday is? Next Sunday, we're in July. Can you believe it? We're already in July. And we're going to start a brand new series. I'm not going to tell you what it's about because some of you... Well, do you really want to know? Yes? Well, let me see. Just teasing. We're going to take through the summer, so July and August for 2 months, we're going to go through and look at all the things that Jesus taught. What did he do? What did Jesus really do on earth? What did he teach? What did he do? How did he teach us stuff? What can we learn from him? So we're going to take that every Sunday and look at a different kind of short story about what Jesus did on earth as we walk our way through the summer. Sound like a plan?
That's good.
You going to be here? Okay. Was waiting for Mike to nod her head. She said she'll be here too. Okay. Blessings to you. Have a wonderful week ahead. And I'll see you in July, which is next Sunday.